Good morning, y'all. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am your host, Justin Michael. We've got a lot to get into today. It's obviously a very active time in the transfer portal. I'm going to give out some names you should follow from within the Mountain West Conference. I think there's some intriguing transfer targets that you could bring in that would be nice fits on both sides of the ball, have a ton of experience, would immediately bolster the depth of this team going into 2025. In the beginning here, we're going to talk about Rocky Beers. If you missed it, the Rams landed Florida international transfer Rocky Beers. Spent the first 2 seasons of his career at Air Force, was a red shirt in 2021, played a little bit in 2022, then went to Florida International with his brother Rowdy, who is also in the transfer portal. I've been asked a lot if CSU is going to land both of them. Honestly, I don't have an inside scoop on Rowdy Beers or anything like that. I would assume that it's within the realm of possibility, given that they both portaled. Maybe he's more of a PWO situation. Didn't have quite as many offers as his brother did coming out of high school, but both these guys have big athletic frames. And more than anything, I think it's just a nice way to add local talent. And, you know, if you hit on a couple of these, like you did with Gabe Kershke in this last cycle, could be a nice little way to both provide a local presence to the roster and, you know, kind of hit on some diamond in the rough type transfer prospects, guys that are maybe getting overlooked by some bigger schools. A lot to get into there. I did in the beginning here just want to say shout out to all of you. I've had a lot of people ask in the comment section the last couple of days, tweet at me and DNVR that I needed to be at the Arizona Bowl. Happy to say the flights were booked yesterday. I will be in Tucson for the Arizona Bowl. I would love to see as many of you as possible out there. Come say what's up. We'll talk football. We'll talk about whatever, man. It'd be a blast. Really looking forward to that. I was 22 years old the first and last time I got to cover a bowl. Did not think that was going to be the case. You know, they had just signed Mike Bobo to that extension. Obviously, the 2017 season kind of puttered out at the end, but I think a lot of people still felt like there was hope moving forward, kind of assumed that we would be back in probably even a bigger bowl moving forward. That didn't happen. I'm almost 30 now, which is crazy. I feel like I've lived a lifetime in between that. Actually, crazy enough, I'm about to close on my first house. So it's been a wild ride to this point between CSU's bowl appearances, but I just wanted to say that I have so much love for the CSU community, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity to talk about the program and the school that I love, that I grew up following, and get to do it for a living and get to interact with all of you. It's really crazy. It's pretty surreal to think about how much has changed since that 2017 New Mexico Bowl versus now. I'm not sure in 2017 I thought that I would still be covering CSU at this point, but I'm honestly so thankful that I am, and there's nowhere I'd rather be. Like this is where I want to be. I'm going to play a clip later on where Jay Norvell says he's not coaching for his next job. I'm not doing this for my next gig. Like, this is the gig to me, and I'm just really thankful for all of you guys. All right, enough of the sappy shit. Let's get into it. Let's talk recruiting. Let's talk CSU football landing Rocky Beers. A former Valor Christian standout, two-way athlete, unsurprising. CSU loves those guys. Played basketball as well, which always translates nicely at tight end. Like I said, spent 2 years at the academy, then 2 years at Florida International. He will come to CSU with 2 years of eligibility remaining as a graduate student. Only played in 1 game this year, so he'll receive a medical waiver for this season. Had 4 catches and a touchdown in that performance against Indiana. Way back in August, it was a 31-7 loss to the Hoosiers, but he scored their lone touchdown. Kind of a shame on the timing of his injury. He was coming on strong between the end of the 2023 season and the beginning of the 2024 campaign. has 22 catches, 176 yards, and 2 touchdowns in his career. But both those touchdowns have come in his last 2 games played. So it feels like he's kind of hitting his stride here. I've talked a lot about how tight end is a hard position to come in and make an impact as a young kid, as a freshman, a sophomore. It does not happen a ton. The speed of the game, the physicality, it's just so much different than high school. Plus, a lot of tight ends collegiately were more of wide receivers at the high school level. So it's a process. It takes these guys a couple of years to develop. I mean, even Trey McBride, who certainly flashed as a freshman, it was more like his sophomore, junior year before he started to come into his own. And he's a freak, So most guys, it's going to take even longer than that. You like the frame, 6'5", 234 pounds. Not a ton of film of him out there, just because there's not a ton of Florida International games available online. Shocker. But he's a big athletic guy that can move well. Could maybe thicken out a little bit, more of a slender guy, but hey, that's fine. He can run well. You can hit him up the seam, more of a red zone threat potentially. I think he's a nice addition to the program. Now, I still anticipate that Jackson Warren is going to be tight end 1. They were really excited about him coming into the year. Massive dude, 6'7", 6'8", really natural pass catcher, great athlete, but you're losing Vince Brown, you're losing Pete Montini, you're losing Jordan Williams to the portal, who, he wasn't even traveling with the team by the end, so that's not exactly a loss in terms of game day, but, you were going to need to add some more tight ends to the room, and going out and adding a local tight end. I love that. There was obviously some frustration when CSU did not sign any local prospects in the early period. I talked about why I felt like it was being blown out of proportion. This isn't the most dynamic local class in the world. 2026 looks very, very impressive. But I do think that there is an opportunity here for CSU, very similarly to what I've said about CSU women's soccer. And that is that you should be the hub for the capable local players that want to come home. You might not land all these guys out of high school. Some of these guys might be a little bit under the radar, and you're thinking there may be more PWO. I'm not sure that the Rams recruited the Beers brothers a ton out of high school. A lot of the local guys they've asked to come in and be PWOs. Some of those guys, they're going to go elsewhere. They're going to prove themselves. Then they can come back. And on top of that, especially with a position like tight end, you're coming in more physically developed, more mature. There's some real benefits there. Now, you're hoping to land the big name guys too, obviously, but I just think that this is a good way to land local prospects is essentially what I'm saying. And I'm going to play a clip here of Jay Norvell talking about local recruiting. He was asked by Sean Keeler back on signing day. The clips I'm playing today, I want to add that they're from signing day. So a couple things have changed. Like in one of the clips, he mentioned, being excited about linebacker and mentioned Boom Jock by name. Obviously, Boom's probably not going to be back now that he's in the portal. At one point, he says, I'm excited to find out where we go with the bowl games. Obviously, we know now they're going to the Arizona Bowl. I just wanted to add that context. But there's a lot of things I wanted to get into that he talked about on signing day, like local recruiting, like the top positions of need in the portal, some young guys that have a chance to step up. But here is Jay Norvell on local recruiting and to keep an eye out for some more local transfers because it sounds like they're expecting multiple.
Piggybacking off that, there aren't any local kids in this class, but the understanding it's early and it's fluid. But I think there was only one reported offer too. Does that just coincidence, or
I think it's
a half dozen out before?
I think it's the year. Next year's going to be really good. Next year will be very, very good. Yes, and it's always, and I'm going to say this in this NIL period and transfer portal period. It always benefits you to have local kids on your roster. Kids are less apt to leave if they're from close to home and there's families after them. And we're not done yet, so I would be surprised if we don't have several actually Colorado kids by the time we're done. Because there may be some portal kids, like Kursky was a Colorado kid that was at Wisconsin and he came back home to play for us. And I think we have heard of several kids like that have interest, and obviously we have to wait till next week and the portal opens to begin that process. But I would be surprised if we didn't have several Colorado kids before we're done.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Obviously, the portal is open now. That was from a week ago. They have since landed a Colorado kid in Rocky Beers. Exciting addition for the program. I'm going to try and get him on the show at some point here over the next couple of days, get his thoughts on coming home. I believe him and Kershke would have overlapped a little bit at Valor Christian, though I would need to double check that. But I'm excited, and I think it's a nice way to add local talent. And sounds like we're going to have to keep our eyes open, that there could be a couple more down the line. We're going to take a quick break real quick. Then we're going to talk about some of the top positions of need for CSU in the portal. We'll talk about some former Rams that are back in the portal, play some more clips from Norvell talking about some transfer target positions and all that fun stuff. But real quick, guys, trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota has built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there is a Toyota truck that's just right for you, like the all-new 2024 Tacoma and the return of the iconic 2024 Land Cruiser. Toyota has 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Not to be outdone, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail, so you can explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides in SUVs like the RAV4 and Grand Highlander. They've got 17 models with all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive like the Epic 4Runner. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. I also want to talk to you guys about Game Time. Game Time encourages people to come together, especially during the holiday season. I was talking about it yesterday, but one of my favorite memories from, being a kid growing up is right around this period, that winter break time frame. You've got bowl season going on. The NBA and NHL are heating up. You're approaching the NFL playoffs. There is a ton happening, and there's a ton happening locally right now. You got the Broncos on Sunday. The Nuggets are back in action tonight. The Avs, although they were rough last night, but they had been doing better. There's a ton to check out in person, and our partners at Game Time have you covered with the best deals around. Game Time's new curation feature, Game Time Picks, is a really great way to filter out all the fluff. The thing about Game Time is they have so many tickets, it can almost be a little bit overwhelming. They're just trying to make that process easier on you by showing you the best of the best. Boom, you hop in there, look in the Game Time Picks, you're getting the best deals available. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use that code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, like I said, we will try and get Rocky Beers on the show at some point this winter before the second semester starts and they get busy with winter workouts. Get his perspective on coming home, what it will mean to him to have an opportunity to play in front of friends and family, what sold him on CSU, all of that fun stuff. I will try and get all the transfers on the show, at least as many as we can. Sometimes they don't get back to me, just part of the process. If you missed it, there are some former Rams that are now back in the portal. I think I've made my opinions on the portal and the process of all this pretty clear, so I'm not going to try and old man rant every single day. It's not my favorite. I think it's chaotic right now. I think there's too much player movement, and I think a lot of these guys get influenced by people that don't have the best interest of the players in mind, and I think a lot of the players end up finding out that the grass isn't always greener. Nevertheless, they have that right. This is the system that we have, and so we're gonna cover it and like it is, which is a big part of college football. If you missed it, Grady Kelly, TJ Crandall, LB, Louis Brown, all back in the transfer portal. Arguably, CSU's three most important losses last season. Justice Ross Simmons would be in there as well. Van Shield is also back in the portal and has already posted about having an opportunity to come back to CSU. Van Shield returning, I think, would make a lot of sense. I don't know how many other options he's going to have out there, just being realistic. That's not a slight on him, but he's an older guy. He's already played at Pueblo, CSU, and Greeley. Like, your options are kind of limited at that point. I'm sure he has a ton of friends on campus still. I'm sure he's got a ton of friends in the program still. He could come back. You trust him if you have to give him carries. He's dependable. He's good in pass pro. No, he's not quite as explosive as some of the guys we saw this year, but I certainly would take him back in the program. Any of these guys, if they wanted to come back, I think they would greatly help CSU. None more so than Grady Kelly. If they could bring back Grady Kelly, I think that's as important of an offseason move as you can make. he's going to have interest. He had a lot of Power 4 schools that offered him last year, ended up back in the Panhandle at Florida State, which made a lot of sense. But, I remember him posting about Houston and Minnesota and North Carolina and I think West Virginia and Kansas and a whole bunch of programs that were after him. I'm sure he's going to have options. That said, he's already experienced what it's like, making that drop, and you go from playing like 500 plus snaps to about 150. You can come back. You're comfortable here. You still got, your buddies in the program, guys like Chase Wilson, who he came up with. I think, he would be open to it at this point after having already experienced, what it's like to just be a depth and a rotational piece at Florida State. Like, why not come back, especially if you have aspirations of making the NFL, be the number one defensive tackle, play 500 to 600 snaps, rack up the stats, get a bunch of film on the table, for the next level. Grady Kelly, finding a way to get him back would be huge. And he did post yesterday that he is officially back in the portal. I'd love to see TJ Crandall back. I think he had a lot of potential, and he flashed as a true freshman, didn't get on the field a ton for West Virginia. You bring him in, he's probably one of your starting corners from day one. Like, a lot of these guys have found out, they're just wanted a bunch at some of these other schools. And if they could come back to the program that believed in them in the first place, could potentially be beneficial. I'm not saying any of these guys will come back definitively, but I think it would make sense for some of them to consider it. Finally, we've got Louis Brown. I have heard there is some interest there, at least on CSU side, to get him to come back. He ended up at San Diego State. I have on pretty good authority that he was pushed into the portal by some people that promised him some pretty big things that didn't come to fruition. Like, you're going to end up at a school like USC or Ohio State. Ultimately ends up at San Diego State. Got suspended one game there, so sounded like maybe he had some issues with the staff. I mean, the fact that he's not sticking around, that's also kind of an indicator. But again, if you can bring him in, he's probably your number one wide receiver from day one. If you bring him back, he already has rapport with Braden. The dude's really good. He's an NFL caliber receiver. If he can get enough reps on film, and if he can stay out of trouble and all, and that's like anybody. I'm not saying he's a troublemaker, but like if he can keep his mind in the right place, and if he can be in a system that's going to get him the type of targets that can showcase his abilities, then LB has a good chance to be a next level receiver. I think he really was kind of next in line to be that Torrey Horton type. Had he chosen to stick around, maybe he'll make that decision in the end. I did ask Norvell if he was open to the possibility of guys returning, and he said that he was. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But here is a video of Jay Norvell on signing day. Again, this is from last week, talking about some potential positions of need for the Rams in the transfer portal. He kind of goes on a couple of tangents, then he lays out some positions of need, then highlights some young guys that he's excited about, then gets back to the actual topic, which is positions of need. Coaches love to do that. They just say what's ever going in their head. And I appreciate it. He gives us good answers, but he does lose track a little bit and then comes back. So here's Norvell talking about some transfer targets in the portal.
One group in particular that you feel like we need to target this position?
I think D tackle is going to be important for us in the portal. And it's also one of the most difficult positions to find players, and everybody in the country is looking for defensive linemen. And so to find quality linemen that fit what we're looking for, it's not easy. But I would think that corner are, and we're losing so many secondary players. We're such top heavy senior oriented with our secondary that to find a couple older players really would be important. I tell you, I love Jet Vincent. I think Jet Vincent is going to be a really good player for us. He's in my office yesterday, and kids looking down on me, and he runs like crazy. And I know he's a six-man guy from Kansas, but we've had good six-man guys before in this program, and so I'm excited about him. Every time he's gotten a chance to play the last few weeks, he just shows up, and very physical, great special teams player. And so he's an exciting young player. And so I'm really excited about Dylan Phelps. I think he's got a chance to be a really good corner for us. And we've kind of been playing catch up, at corner. We really need to sign and develop some young players in our program where they can really play for us for several years. And so that's the challenge of the portal. But, we're going to have our eyes out on several different positions in the portal. And we did not sign a quarterback in this group. And so, we'll just kind of see how that goes. But, we could sign a couple tight ends, a couple linemen, offensive linemen, as well as probably not a linebacker. Really happy with Chase and Boom, and Owen Long's had an amazing year for a young freshman. Just so proud of his progress. So we got a lot of good young kids that are doing a lot of good things, and we'll try to add to them this next month.
Will Chase be back for sure?
I'm hoping will. I've had great conversations with him, and I just got to tip my hat to Chase about his leadership skills. He's been a phenomenal leader, and I think that's one of the neatest things for us as coaches, to see the growth and maturity of your leadership. And and I mentioned it last week. I've been a head coach 8 years, and this is by far the best leadership we've had. Henry Blackburn and Jack Howell and Chase Wilson and Jacob Gardner and Torrey Horton and Patty Turner and Braden kind of stepped into that role after Torrey got hurt. Best job of leadership in my 8 years of being a head coach. And I'm so proud of how those guys have responded. And we're not done yet. We got one more game, and these games aren't worth playing if you're not in it to win it. And so, we're in it to win the game, and we're excited about the opportunity, and we're looking forward to find out where we're going. And, and it'll be most of these guys. I mean, we got some Nevada kids that have played at a bowl game, but the rest of them haven't. So excited about that.
As we scroll.
All right, a lot that he hit on there in a short couple of minutes, laid out some positions, which is what I'm going to talk about here, what I believe are the top positions that the Rams should target. We do have a good question from Jacob in the Toyota chat. For players that commit within the next few days, would there be any way that they are available for the bowl game? No, the bowl game is technically a part of the 2024 season. All of these transfers that are happening, they're going to be on your 2025 roster. So no, they won't be enrolled in the school yet. So they won't be able to participate in the bowl there. Jay threw out a couple of positions that you should keep an eye on as far as the transfer portal process goes. He mentioned defensive tackle, and obviously I just highlighted Grady Kelly. I'm with him. I think that's probably the most important position for the Rams to add depth this offseason one way or another. If you could land Kelly back, that would be huge. But you're losing Cam Barratown, you're losing James Mitchell. And while I am really excited about Andrew Lorich, I think he is going to be a stud for the Rams in the interior. The dude just lays the wood out there, really strong, really physical. I love his mentality. I'm a big Andrew Lorich fan. You just need some experience there because you are losing so many key contributors, guys that have played multiple years for you now. On the defensive side, in the interior, it's going to be tough. You're losing a lot. You're basically losing your entire secondary. I mean, some of these guys, Jalen Gardner is a guy that I think has a really bright future. I think if you can get Aiden Hector back, that would be huge. He's got 1 year left. It seems like he's coming back. Also does seem like Chase Wilson is coming back for the record based on everything I've heard. So, I mean, that's huge, but, you're losing both your starting corners. You're losing your starting safeties. Like, they are going to be pretty thin there in terms of guys that have contributed in a major way over these last couple of seasons. If I had to rank 1 through 5, what are the most important positions? It would be 1 defensive tackle, 2 cornerback, 3 offensive tackle, 4 defensive end/edge, and 5 wide receiver. Wide receiver is not massive for me. I would like to add another veteran, a guy that you could depend on that has proven himself at this level, but I'm excited about Armani Winfield, and I think some of these young guys in particular are going to be quite good. Jordan Ross has a really high ceiling. Even some of these other guys, I'm drawing a blank on his name, kid out of Nevada, that Levon Brown. I think he has a pretty bright future ahead of him as well. They put Tommy Maher on scholarship. Nice, 3-down receiver, sure hands, all that fun stuff. Some other positions, if I had to throw a couple more out, linebackers probably on the list now that Boom Jock is in the portal. There's a couple of interesting guys with Mountain West connections that I think you could look at potentially there. Brian Parham, the former San Jose State linebacker that was at Washington this year in particular, is a guy I'd like to keep an eye on. I think you could add another tight end into the mix, quarterback, kicker, punter. Brett in the Toyota chat wants to know what happened with Boom Jock. I can't speak for him. I think he and Freddie were pretty tight. Him and Newer are best friends too. Newer Gatkuth. Both those guys pretty tight with Freddie. That could be in the mix. Both of them are high ceiling guys that I think potentially could be intriguing to some Power 4 programs based on the offers that some of these guys have posted about so far. I wonder if they regret their decision to enter the portal. But honestly, I don't know. And I don't think it would be fair to speculate much further beyond that. Some guys just decide they want to leave. It's part of the process. It's not always that deep. Like I said, though, tight end, maybe you add another quarterback since you didn't sign one. I'm a big believer of you just sign a quarterback every single class. You could add a veteran kicker or punter. You signed one of each, but both those guys are kind of unproven. You're losing your starting specialist. We'll see what happens there. I'm going to throw out, like I said, 10 potential names to throw out, transfer targets from within the Mountain West Conference. Real quick, though, I do want to shout out our partners over at Coors Light. The holiday season is fastly approaching. It's stressful buying gifts, hosting family, all of that fun stuff. I will admit, as much as I love Christmas and the holidays, it's a little bit less magical when you're an adult and have to do all the adulting things that come with the holidays. But Coors Light, they encourage you to rise above all of that, to enjoy it, to choose a chill mindset. When you're kicked back, when you're chilling, crack open an ice cold Coors Light when the mountains turn blue. Cold as the Rockies, Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for that smooth finish. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Also want to shout out Raising Cane's. You want to race in there, turbocharge your order. Nobody does it better than Raising Cane's when it comes to when it comes to chicken fingers. They're always cooked to order, made just for you. I love that Texas toast. They have perfected it. For cooked to order, hand-battered chicken fingers, race into Raising Cane's. Turbocharge your chicken fingers. Get them even faster by ordering online at raisingcanes.com or through their mobile app. Raising Cane's chicken fingers. One love. All right, we got some more questions here from the Toyota chat. Henry wants to know, what's the situation with the quarterbacks? How are the young and looking in practice? We don't get to be at like every single practice. There was a 30-minute availability this week. There will be a couple next week. This week is really about the young guys as they go through finals. It's a lot of young guys getting reps. A lot of the veterans aren't even practicing fully this week. They are starting with like game plan install and all that here as we get into the weekend. But we'll have some more answers for you in terms of how guys are looking in practice early next week, just so you know. But it's shouldn't be that different. I wouldn't anticipate. You still have your starting quarterback. I don't know. I don't think we're going to learn a ton the next couple of weeks out of practice, I guess is what I'm saying. Jacob wants to say, do you have any names to watch for the defensive coordinator position? None that I feel comfortable enough going on the air yet, because I don't want to lead you guys astray. I've heard some things. I do think it's going to be a Power 4 position coach based on what I've heard, but I'll give you some names in the next couple of days. I want to get a little bit better information. I don't want to float stuff just for the sake of it and have it be way off. There's just so much information that gets thrown around with these coaches searches, and you got to really trust your source, to be honest, because I've been burned in the past before, especially from like agents and stuff. I'm not trying to rail on agents again, I promise, but they're just trying to get their guys' names out. And there's a lot of information that gets floated and passed through the grapevine that ultimately comes from agents that in the end is bullshit. So I just don't want to give you guys the incorrect information there. 10 potential Mountain West targets to keep an eye on. And if you're listening on YouTube this morning, sure would appreciate if you give us a thumbs up. Helps for the algorithm. We'll start at, I guess we'll start at the top. I think that makes the most sense. The number one guy out of the Mountain West that I would like to see the Rams go out and add is offensive tackle Isaiah World. Now, it's a long shot. Nevada transfer, 6'8", 309 pounds. He's been a 3-year starter for Nevada. Signed for them under Norvell. So you've got previously established relationships, which could help. Could potentially be animosity, depending on how he felt about Norvell's departure, too, given that he stayed in Reno. But he, out of everybody in the league that you could bring in, your day one starting left tackle, I mean, that would be huge. From what I've read, he's going to have some pretty serious interest. Sounds like Ohio State and schools like that are after him. Now, you can make an argument that he might end up being a depth piece there, and we've talked about that a lot. You know, a lot of these guys go to bigger schools thinking, man, I'm going to produce there just like I did in the Mountain West, and they find out that's not the case. But if they could bring over anybody, Isaiah World would be my number one target from within the Mountain West. Number two, probably running back Eli Sanders out of New Mexico. He rushed for over 1,000 yards this season. You're losing Avery. I'd like to see them add another veteran back with some explosiveness. 5'11", 194 pounds, kind of a bowling ball. He started his career at Iowa State. Really solid running back guy, can catch the ball a little bit too. I would love to see. There's a couple of guys from New Mexico that I would like to see CSU in on. But he's number one for me. Drew Watts, another Norvell signee at Nevada that stuck around, did not come when he came to CSU. 5'11", 218 pounds. A guy that's a really good athlete. He's rangy, a little bit undersized in terms of his height, but he's really rangy. He's been productive, averaged about 60 tackles a year over the last 3 seasons. Not sure how he is in pass coverage, to be honest, but he's a run stuffer. And another guy that you have established ties with. And given that you lost Boom Jock, as excited as you are about some of these young guys coming up, I think Owen Long is going to be really good for the Rams. If you can bring in Drew Watts for a year, that would be a nice addition to the program here. Air Force safety Lincoln Teote Mariner, 5'11", 215 pounds. I think you could put him in the nickel. 50 tackles, 2 sacks, forced fumble this past year. Really high on him. He's a freight train coming downhill. A versatile guy too in pass coverage. I would really love to see him in the mix. There's 4 or 5 DBs in the league this year. I think if you could land like 1 or 2 of them, it would really set you up for success. Noah Avenger, the corner out of New Mexico. He's a stud, 6 foot, 186 pounds. Started at San Diego State, played in like 25 games there. Then came to New Mexico, 140 tackles in his career, a lot of experience. Not the biggest guy in the world, and that's the thing about Mountain West corners. Like, you're not going to find very many that are 6'3" and have the length that like Chigozie and Uzium had a couple of years ago. You need some guys that are a little bit undersized but play bigger than their size, that are, you know, aggressive. Noah Avenger, I would certainly put in that category. Christian Ellis, another guy out of New Mexico, safety, 6 foot, 200 pounds. Listed with 160 tackles and an interception over the last 2 years. Highly productive. He stood out a lot to me when I watched New Mexico these last couple years. I just felt like he was everywhere. Seemed like he was always in the play. You trust him in coverage. Like I would really like to see Christian Ellis come over. DJ Harvey, the San Jose cornerback, 5'11", 174. Again, not the biggest corner in the world, but he's got long arms, 86 tackles, 4 interceptions over the last 2 years. So he's a ball hawk. Another guy that just gives you some experience. And that's kind of the spot you're in because of the portal the last couple of years, you know, losing guys like Crandall, hanging on to Dylan Phelps this cycle. That was huge. Losing him after losing Crandall last year, that would have been a big blow. And I think he'll be your number 1 corner next year. But you got to find somebody to line up opposite of him, and you're going to need some depth. Seen a lot of people throw out Louis Brown. He would be in my top 10 for sure. We've already talked about him, but he had 38 catches for 620 yards and 3 scores this year. Less catches, more receiving yards than what he had at CSU the year before. Again, I think he could come in and be your number 1 receiver. Greg Burrell, freshman running back out of UNLV, 6'1", 205 pounds. He had 61 carries as a true freshman, so early production, 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. Decided to go in the portal. Once Odom announced that he's going to Purdue, I do wonder, especially if Brennan Marion follows Odom to Purdue, if Burrell's a candidate to potentially follow him. But in his high school recruiting, it came down to CSU and to UNLV. He's a Nevada kid, so you've got some ties there established already. I'd keep an eye on him at least. Again, you're going to need another running back, given that you are losing Avery Morrow. Braden Siders, the Wyoming defensive end, Colorado kid, he entered the portal. It seems like the guys that actually contributed for Wyoming and played have a hard time flipping sides, and I get that. I think emotionally it's just a kind of a weird ordeal. Usually when you have the CSU to Wyoming transfer to Wyoming, or vice versa, it's like a PWO situation, like Clay Nanke, who was a defensive end, then he was a tight end for a while at CSU. Now he's a tight end at Wyoming, as he was a PWO there last winter. There's not a ton of transfers between Wyoming and CSU, which makes sense. I saw some people throw out Mikey Keene. That's less likely to me. He's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. I think you're planning on Braden being back and rolling with him next year, so I don't foresee that happening. Maybe you're in on Caden Dudley, though, out of Palmer Ridge High School, another Colorado kid, left Boise State this year, kind of a running back, wide receiver hybrid. That's a tongue twister. He's a punt returner, a kick returner, kind of a jack of all trades that you could bring in and find a different role for him. 5'10", 205, strong, good athlete, nice hands. I'd be stoked if they could bring him in. I've got some more questions then. So has Van Shield officially been committed to CSU? I've seen reports that he has, but from what I've seen on X, Shield just got offered from CSU. I don't believe that was a commitment post. I believe that was just a post saying that he has received an opportunity to come back to CSU. I don't know if that's via scholarship or as a walk-on again. I don't anticipate that he's going to have a ton of options, just being realistic. Mile High Huddle also wants to know, is there any potential that former Rams like Grady Kelly, LB, or Crandall may be a return to FOCO? We talked about that at the beginning of the show. I believe it's possible. There's going to be interest on CSU side. Whether it actually comes to fruition or not, we shall see. Yeah, those are some guys from the Mountain West to keep an eye on. I know we just kind of rapid fired through there, so maybe I'll write about it as well. It might be a little bit easier to follow. But before I give some final thoughts and we get on out of here, if you have any more questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, fire them my way in the Toyota chat. We're going to play one more clip from signing day of Jay Norvell. I asked him about the shift in offensive philosophy and whether that was something they had to talk about with some of the guys they were recruiting. Was it a consistent issue or anything like that for them? I thought Jay's answer was interesting. So here's Norvell on the shift in offensive philosophy, being versatile and not really worrying about not worrying about having to please everyone.
Towards that.
You guys had a shift in offensive philosophy this year. Was there any impact in recruiting, either from guys being like, I don't want to play in this, it's not air raid anymore,
Yeah.
or are you looking at different players because of that?
No, I just think, I guess veteran coaches don't get as concerned about that. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm a veteran coach, I guess. I have some retired NFL coaches that are friends that say you have to play the game you need to play to win. And Belichick did it for years, okay? He'd play at one defense one game, and then he'd look at it, the LA Rams, and they're running the ball on everybody, and he played a completely different defense than anybody had played against him. And that comes from experience in doing it, and I said it a few weeks ago, they're just plays to me, it's a power, it's a counter, it's an outside zone, it's a play action, it's a boot, it's a drop back pass. And sometimes, we shift gears last weekend, when we got behind, you saw a lot of those air raid plays, and our kids are able to shift gears and do that. And I think that's important. So Yes, we've had to address that with players. Even our own players.
Have they embraced it? Because when I asked you about this a couple months ago, you said, I don't know if all of them are mature enough to understand why.
Well, I think in time, and I think it had to grow on Braden. At first he didn't understand it, and guys like Torrey, who had been with me, and I mean we've been one of the we've thrown the ball as much as anybody in the country the last few years, and Torrey's been a part of that, and so it was different for him, and obviously he got hurt, but I mentioned this before. I went through the spring. I watched our entire football team. We watched every practice together. I think I had a real pulse on our personnel, and I felt like we needed to do this to win games. And so I'm not interviewing for my next job, okay? I want to win here. And so the things we do are, every decision that I make as a head coach is to help CSU be the very best it can be. And so my ego's not tied up in style points. And so, and a lot of people are. I mean, that's your guys' job. You write about all that stuff all the time. So you got to have something to do. So, but for me, my decisions are very simple. Is this going to help us be better? Is this going to help our guys win? And sometimes those decisions aren't popular. I get that. I got a lot of people that are mad at me. It's just the way it is. It's life in the big city. And I think every head coach understands that. When you deal with so many people, you can't make everybody happy. And so there's no sense in worrying about it because it's never going to happen. So.
All right. Jay Norvell has been letting us know how he really feels these last couple of weeks, which has been fun from my standpoint. I mean, obviously I'd rather have a coach keeping it real with us than somebody who gives a bunch of cookie cutter generic answers, cliches, all of that stuff. Taylor in the Toyota chat says, Jay came off really confident in that presser. Does it feel like he's more comfortable in the role than he has been? That's interesting, and that's something that I've put a lot of thought into, but I do think that is an interesting perspective. I will say, just off the top of my head here, I'm sure that he feels a little bit more at ease than he did, say, after the CU game. You rattle off 8 wins, you put together a really nice stretch there in league play, you win a couple of rivalry games. I'm sure he's feeling a lot better than he did because the pressure was on. We talked about it. There was pressure coming into this year. Now, it's not mission accomplished. We're done here. We can just kick back. We did it. It's not that. You got to build off of this. But they made major strides in the right direction. And I do think Jay is confident in the direction with which this program is going. You've still got some continuity within the staff, which is huge. Obviously, you're going to have a new defensive coordinator. But I think for Jay, that's a good thing because him and Freddie had been clashing for a couple of years there. So, yeah, I think he's confident. I think there's a little bit of a carefreeness to him with how he's going out and just kind of putting it out there how he really feels. Now, I've had some people ask me, like, is that going to put CSU at a disadvantageous position on the recruiting trail? Are we going to get blackballed by agents or something like that? I don't know. I would assume if the agent was actually good at their job, they wouldn't be that small and that petty, and that they would represent the best interests of their clients. But if they're not, then that kind of comes back to what I've been saying from the beginning, which is that most of these dudes are fucking snakes in the first place. So I don't have a ton of hate there if Norvell wants to go after some of these guys, because I think they deserve it, just being real. But obviously you want to be able to land as much talent as possible, and there is a part of this where you've got to be politically correct and then play the game a little bit too. I think it's a fair point that's been raised about it possibly being bad for the relationships that CSU has with these agents, but that's when you try and smooth things over by like having Chad Savage be the point of contact in those situations and stuff like that. Colton Bosnos, some of the other people that you have on staff. I did think it was interesting that he went on the record and said, I'm not coaching for my next job. I think there's some truth to that. I mean, he's in his his 60s. Like, I don't think he's at this stage of his career, outside of going on a crazy run this year. Like, I don't think he would be the hottest candidate for Power 4 gigs, but I do think he's a guy that could be successful at CSU. And obviously, I've put a lot of support behind this staff these last couple of years. While there have been some frustrating moments, I felt like this year was a step in the right direction. But, you know, next year you've got to build off of it. You got 7 home games again. Just first glance at the schedule, it seems fairly manageable. So you're in a pretty good spot, hopefully, to build off of it. And, you know, maybe you make the Mountain West Championship next year. Would be cool to go out on top. You know, you haven't been in that spot in a long time. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Got a crazy day coming up. Shout out to all of you in the Toyota chat. Thank you for your kind responses about the house. It means a lot. I'm stoked to put some roots down officially and, you know, be a part of this Northern Colorado community for life. You know, like I said, I don't intend on going anywhere. Jay Norvell is not coaching for his next job. I'm not podcasting for my next job. But shout out to all of you guys. So much love for everybody in Rams country. A shout out to our man Riley, who has been our new full-time producer, CSU alum, absolutely murdering it behind the scenes, making all of this happen flawlessly with the transitions, keeping me up to date with all your guys' comments. It's hard to follow while I'm, you know, looking at my script for the show and ads and everything. Like, he does a great job of making sure I see what you guys are commenting. So give some love to Riley as well. Much love to all you. Happy holidays, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.